That was a close one. Or was it? Let's get into this shit. So this is something I've wanted to do for a while. Just test out the slow-mo difference in this and the Sony a6300 Cyclists. And the reason why I want to test that is because this guy only shoots 720 if you want to shoot slow-mo, but it does so at a higher bit rate than the 1080 that the Sony shoots. And to be honest, I've not really seen the difference, but I've not done any side by side. So that's kind of what I'm going to do today, but some bits I need to put the test together. This is one of them things where if this goes right, you'll have already seen it, because I'll use it as an intro. And if it goes wrong, you may never even see this. So the idea, right, is to use some tubing to deliver some air into here, which will blow up some flour over a flame and hopefully ignite. Bit of Gorilla Tape that in the bottom. Now let's fill it up with flour, put a flame in and deliver some air. So for test one, I'm just going to see if I can actually blow enough air into it to actually move the flour. That was pitiful. That was absolutely pitiful. I think I need to get to the air compressor a bit sooner than I thought. Full breath. I'm going to cut it, is it? One problem. I'm going to start this up now, but there's 3 dogs here that are probably going to go mad. That's a surprise. I've got it hooked up to this. Max pressure. Let's see what it actually does this time. So I've sacked off the flour just because, well, it wasn't working. Been a long time since I've done it, and I don't know, maybe I'm forgetting something, maybe there's like a knack to it, and maybe I'm just using the wrong stuff, setting it up wrong, whatever. So I'm just going to set it up with some water, and I don't know, maybe hopefully the effect will be this, like, similar enough, and maybe I could try it with some petrol if things get crazy.
Oh my dog, what happened? It went bang.
Don't worry, I'll help.
Seriously warm today. And also, can you hear the snoring in this guy? Snore much, Bill?
Why don't you just let me sleep? Go back to a bloody video.
Absolute much. There's also a road right there, which is really annoying because I'm out in the middle of the countryside. It's beautiful, lovely day, and then just road. But you can still hear me, can't you? What I wanted to do today was just to either prove to myself that I needed to keep the a6300 just to use the slow-mo sometimes. It's a nice little addition to your kit. Having something that can be the thing that is just like, it's on slow-mo all the time. You grab it out of your bag, you film it, stick it back in. You don't have to like switch settings about. Is it raining? It's actually fucking raining. It's like the hottest day of the year so far and it's raining. Having a camera that you kind of dedicate just to that is great. But then I thought, I don't really need all that extra room taken up. Because, you know, you've not just got the camera, you've got the lens, you've got the batteries, you've got the charger, you need to take more memory cards along with you. All that stuff sort of adds up. Even if the camera's tiny, it's still extra. And the EOS R does shoot 120 frames per second. I'm glad that they put it in because I think it'd be annoying without it at all. But I wanted to see if it's good enough, if it stacks up against the a6300, because I've used that a lot on client work, on stuff that people have actually paid for and really loved. I've used that and it's been pretty good. You know, it shoots 120, I mean, I'm in a PAL region, so it shoots 100 frames per second in full HD, so that's 1080p. The EOS R, on the other hand, only shoots at, what is it, 100 frames per second at, it's coming to me, 720, that's HD, so it's still HD. It does so at a slightly higher bit rate, not a lot in it, I think maybe 180 megabits per second as opposed to 100 megabits per second. I think if you were going to shoot in log in that, you could maybe grade it a little bit. You can't externally record 720, so you can only use the 8-bit C-Log. But if you shoot it right, it looks pretty great actually. And yeah, if you compare it like this with the 1080p, you're gonna see a little bit of loss in detail. And zooming into 400%, you're gonna see it. But when are you ever zooming into 400%? Please don't zoom into 400%, it's just silly. On the Sony's also a crop sensor, but again, that's a trade-off that I'm kind of happy to make. So it was a bit of a fail before. I wanted to create like a little explosion, like a repeatable explosion, you know, kind of like how they do in films. I remember years ago I did this thing with flour and a tea light, and you kind of put the flour and the tea light together and you just like blow through like a straw into it, and it, because these are fuel-rich particles, and once they sort of saturate the air in a certain way, it ignites, and that ignition is almost like an explosion because it goes from thing to thing. Didn't want to do it with any, like, there's dogs about, like today we're looking after my mum's dogs and my sister's dog, so I didn't want to do anything with like petrol. I mean, there's nowhere really to do that, so I didn't want to do anything like stupid with that. You know, one way you can do it is you have a hose and ideally something metal on the end, and you fill that with a bit of petrol and have some sort of ignition source above that. Fire some compressed air into it, blows the petrol out of the whatever thing is, petrol lights on the way up, fireball. That's how they do explosions in like Hollywood films, because when stuff explodes it doesn't create a fireball in real life. I settled on doing some like hits from a rifle kind of thing. You know, when a bullet hits the ground, it sprays up some stuff, it hits a tree, it sprays some stuff out. I thought I'd do that because what I wanted to look at, for a lot for my own sake as much as doing it for a video, to know exactly what these slow-mos look like side by side. I wanted some like particulates in the air, because a lot of stuff that you'd shoot with slow-mo is going to be like smoke or things flying through the air, or, you know, just things that kind of are difficult to capture, things that look great. So that's why I wanted to get a little bit of like explosion so you could see like the particulates side by side, and the bit at the beginning was just, you know, a way of making that fun for me today. So I was quite surprised when I actually put these side by side. I actually thought there was going to be a much bigger difference. I'm not sure which way I thought that difference was going to go. I don't know, I'm kind of optimistic on the side of the Canon. So these two shots side by side, A and B, which one do you think is which? A or B? Sony or Canon? And same again for these two shots. Okay, so camera A is the Canon, it's the EOS R, that is 720p slow-mo, and obviously then camera B is the Sony. Now the colours on the Canon I did like a lot better. So when I pulled these in, this is how they looked before. You can see the Canon's a lot more saturated. It's a nicer image straight out of the camera. I turned off log. I think it looks pretty great. The Sony, on the other hand, it's not a flat pitch profile, it's just on neutral. The Sony straight out of the camera doesn't look great. What I did was I applied a bit of a colour grade, got them to match up a little bit, and I think at that point the Sony looked really good. So I was shooting these on, the Sony was a 50, the 51.8, and the Canon had a little bit of an advantage because it was on the 100mm macro. I shot them both at the exact same settings though. The reason for the macro, the 100mm, was because I wanted to try and sort of match the field of view as close as I could, and that's the only lens that I had that would do that. So I'd say the Canon, especially on the second shot of the coffee being, the milk being poured into the coffee, I thought it was out of focus as I was like shooting it. I thought maybe the focus was off, but actually it was just soft. The thing I would say though is I went to a cocktail tasting the other night, and obviously I'm only going to take one camera. The EOS R is the better camera in so many ways. The footage straight out of it is brilliant. The HD is just fantastic. The autofocus is unbeatable compared to everything I've ever used. So that is the camera that I'm going to take. And this is the footage I captured with the slow motion. And it's completely usable. I don't think there's any doubt from me that it's absolutely fine. And I think the problem only comes when you start to compare side by side. It's only when you've got these direct comparisons that you, as someone who's looking for these differences and similarities, is going to notice it. So for the most part, it's absolutely fine. So the thing that I came up with in the end, this is one of the setups, this is the final setup. Basically just buried this hose underneath the ground. There's just a bit of PVC tubing. It goes to the tyre inflator. And so when you hit this, a bit of air goes down to the end, and well, I'm not powering it up again because it's noisy as fuck, but you get the idea. And for the other shot, I just fashioned this out of a bit of old kitchen roll tube. So it's just a little funnel. Pack this with a load of random debris. Attach it to the tree. Whoop. Attach it to the ground. Don't attach it to the ground, just put it pointing upwards. Fire it off. Fires out a load of stuff. Happy days. Do you agree, Bill? Hey, Snuffleupagus. What are you saying?
All I think is if anyone's still watching and they've not liked and subscribed, they're bloody idiots.